Hi, I'm St. Cloud Mayor Dave Kleis. This is my last day as mayor of the city of St. Cloud. I've been honored to serve the community for 20 years. Back when we did the sesquicentennial, we had all of the mayors in. In fact, I'm going to let myself introduce this tape of all the mayors. Of course, now we have Jake Anderson, who will be sworn in tonight. Jake Anderson will become the 46th mayor of the city of St. Cloud. Enjoy the interviews of the previous mayors, and it has been an honor and a privilege to serve all of you.
In the last 46 years since 1960, St. Cloud has had 8 mayors. We've had the privilege to interview those mayors as they reflect on the past.
I think the function I enjoyed the most was working with a very intelligent and hardworking staff of 300 people. We had very few personnel problems in that time, and I was in almost 10 years, and that's pretty unusual. And I enjoyed working with the council also, and I was only in the town 5 years before I was elected mayor. Many of the council people were born and raised in the town, and most of them had lived in the town for over 40 years. I was the new kid on the block, and I thought I'd take some guff because of that. But they were totally great to me and worked with me closely, and we never really had any big disagreements.
The thing I enjoyed most about being the mayor was the chance to work with those consummate professionals like Bud Streitz and Nick Grams and Fred Thielman and Phil Nierengarten, Ray Harry, the fire chief, and those people were pros, and they knew what they were doing. Well, Bill Ridge and Cy Knapp, too, in the engineering department. Just working with those people was a true pleasure.
I think the thing I enjoyed the most was visiting with the kids. I was out in the schools a lot. I went to almost every private and public school at least once, and some of them 2 or 3 times. And that was really great, talking to the kids about my values, about the city, about the role of mayor. And of course, they're at that age of their life where the mayor's a real big deal to them, and it was always fun to go out in the schools and talk to the kids.
Well, the function I enjoyed the most was being a people's mayor, being on the streets on a daily basis, getting involved with community action programs so that the people of St. Cloud could feel comfortable with me, that I was available to respond to any questions or concerns that they might have regarding the operation of our beautiful city.
Well, I think I enjoyed meeting people, making new acquaintances, and I enjoyed seeing the city move.
Well, there was a lot of things that I really and truly enjoyed, and a lot of it was never having 2 days alike, being around a lot of activities, working with staff, and it was just, you know, an everyday difference from working in a job that's kind of routine. There was never those 2 days alike, and so it was very different.
I enjoyed the daily interaction with the city employees. That was I looked forward to every morning coming into City Hall and just dealing with the day-to-day issues. But I also really enjoyed the experience of dealing with other elected officials. There were a lot of organizations that you get involved with when you're mayor, from local organizations to statewide to national, and those really provided you with an opportunity to learn a lot from other elected officials on how they did things in their communities, and tried to bring those back to St. Cloud and benefit from those. And those are probably the 2 aspects of the job that I enjoyed the most.
As far as the most significant issue we had, it was a bricks and mortar problem. We had a city offices consisting of 5 buildings, 2 basically falling down, 2 inadequate, and renting 1 building. That's what prompted us to build the present City Hall. It was a bricks and mortar era. We had very few social problems. I think today you still have bricks and mortar problems, but I think they're overshadowed by, I guess, problems in the social endeavor of the city, bringing people together in concert for getting the job done.
Well, the most significant issue then, and possibly even now, is St. Cloud was a growing city. The whole area was growing. At the beginning, at the inception there, we had St. Cloud, and we had White Park and Sauk Rapids and Sartell, and these were all pretty much separate and distinct. Even the westerly edge of St. Cloud Township was. The function then of the growing, the immense growing that was going on at the time, and tended to merge them. So you now have a St. Cloud metropolitan area. Each of these areas still maintaining their own neighborhood and identity, but at that time it was just starting out, and we had virtually nothing in planning staff to assist on that. And that was a large problem, or large questions up there.
How do you handle the city's growth? And you know, there were just a preponderance of issues related to that. How do you protect the environmentally sensitive areas as the city moved out into the old township? How do you handle the racial diversity, the growing diversity? We were going from an all-white community to a community with a huge population of color and people from all ethnicities. And of course the traffic, huge problems with growth related to not having enough highways, big enough highways, fast enough highways. And frankly, those issues haven't changed. Not too much time has gone by since I was mayor, and I think those issues are still about the same.
Well, the most significant issue, of course, was the litigation of the Pan Trust property, which is now Northway Drive and Whitney Recreational Park. That had been in litigation for many, many years, and for whatever reason, it was never determined to move ahead and litigate the Pan Trust issue. We decided to move forward to that issue. We also felt it could have been dangerous for us in the sense that we didn't know any of the survivors or possible survivors of the Pan Trust property. But anyway, it was litigated, brought to the courts. We had an attorney here in St. Cloud, Jerry Thoreen, who was responsible and contracted with our city to do the litigation work, and it was successful, and really one of the fine things that did happen during my term of office that gave us the opportunity to develop that whole northwestern part, Northway Drive.
Started in January of after taking office with the largest state shutdown of a business in the state with Fingerhut closing, and that kind of set the tone for the term. That was followed shortly by the state taking significant local government aid from cities across the state, and it was about $2.4 million from St. Cloud. And that was by far the most significant issue that we had to deal with during my term as mayor. Being able to afford services when you lost that $2.4 million state resource became a very significant issue. We wanted to do it without increasing property taxes, and we, I think, did it in a very successful manner. We received accolades from many areas, including legislators from both sides of the aisle, on how we handled it here in St. Cloud, and so I think we did a very responsible job in dealing with those issues. As we film this, I've only been out of office for a couple of months, so I'm not sure that there's a great deal of difference between now and then. The principal issue facing the city is how do you finance local government, and because all other issues stem from that. There are issues today with respect to property ownership and how we're dealing with rentals and how we deal with nuisance complaints and things like that. But the resolution of all those problems is going to spring from how we finance local government. What can we afford to do? And when we're talking enforcement issues, we're talking about the need to be able to fund the resources the city needs. So the principal issue facing the city today remains that same issue that was facing us over the 4 years that I was mayor, and that is how do you finance local government?
We have, as I say, a lot more social problems than we had during my tenure. I think in my tenure we had very few assaults and to a great degree very few murders. I think we only had one, and that was over a 10-year period, and I think that is a problem today that is probably much tougher to solve than building a city hall or a bricks and mortar problem.
Well, it's always usually, and it still is, budget and budget. But there was annexation that we were going through, working on the former St. Cloud Township, and that was a big issue, and I put a lot of time into that effort. And of course, it's always, streets and our roads, and so many different things that there was always those issues. Barking dogs.
So when I finished, it was such an amazing and stimulating experience for me that I thought I'd reduce it to writing. And I wrote the book, and it was titled Micropolis, which means small city, Micropolis in Transition. And in it, I traced the history of St. Cloud from being basically a rural hamlet into a regular incorporated city. And Micropolis meant small city changing. It was a period of change for St. Cloud because it was moving from what basically was a rural complex into a municipal complex. And there were lots of pains and tribulations that went along with that, because the retirees from the countryside weren't used to much government, and when they came into the city, they didn't like to be handicapped or run by city government, and you had a tough educational job to do to convince people that they had to change their way of living from being isolated in rural areas to living in an urbanized complex. And one thing they resented, of course, was the higher taxes and the more regimented way of life that you have to endure when you come under a government, which they did as they moved into the city. So, but it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it immensely.
Well, there were a number of humorous times, but the one I remember most vividly was early in the term. The Equitennial, had the canoe derby on at the time. They were running down the Mississippi, and they stopped at Wilson Park every year and stayed overnight and took off early in the morning. Well, no mayor can pass up a large crowd, so I went over there to add class to the group, and my wife came over later with the kids in the car. As she was coming in, the young patrolman on traffic control there, she rolled down the window and asked him, "Is Tom Mealy here yet?" And he looked at his listing there and he said, "No, none of the canoeists are in yet." And that kind of gave me an idea of the relative importance of the mayor in St. Cloud.
I hadn't been in office more than about 3 months, and John Dolans, the city engineer, got a couple of men out, and they dug a hole in the blacktop in my parking space and put in a concrete slab about 6 inches by 12 inches long. And that was because I used to ride a motorcycle to the office, and I put my kickstand on that piece of concrete so it wouldn't dig into the blacktop.
Well, I think it's very interesting. I every once in a while I have a good laugh about that because I think it was in the mid 70s. We had a little bit of discussion. You know, the Vietnam War was in its highest point, and one day we were covered by reporters out of Minneapolis, and one in particular from the Minneapolis Tribune. And she came to my office, sat down to do an interview, and I still chuckle about that today. She said, "You know, Mr. Mayor, you've been referred to as the senior Mayor Daley of Chicago." And I just, that was just so humorous. I just continued to laugh about it as we continued the interview. But it made the front pages of the Minneapolis Tribune. I guess whatever way you want to look at it, whether it was a good omen or a bad omen that you had been referred to or as the same type of characteristics as Mayor Daley in Chicago, well, I guess I would debate that with anyone, but that was, to me, one of the humorous parts of my administration.
One of the towards the end of my term, one of the last things I got to do was to declare Ed Henry Day at an event out at St. John's, and it was a lot of fun because growing up in St. Cloud, Ed Henry, when he was mayor, I'm going to use this in a moment, but when he was mayor, I was in the latter years of grade school and high school, and he had a great deal of influence on me growing up. He was also a professor out at St. John's, and he ran the Center for the Study of Local Government. And in that role, Dr. Henry was the editor of Micropolis in Transition, which is a book that was published, and it was a case study of St. Cloud during the 1900s. And it is a book that I got when I was in high school. I read it then, and as I was mayor, it was on my desk every day, and I referred to it often. And it was a great pleasure to be able to go out to St. John's as they were endowing a chair for Dr. Henry and declare Ed Henry Day. The funny part of it was that I also made a confession at that time. Mayor Henry, as I was growing up, and he still does, have a very attractive daughter, Mary Beth. And she's my age, and I have to confess that I first became interested in the Henry family through Mary Beth, not Mayor Henry, and I made that confession that day. Unfortunately, Mary Beth had some plane problems, some connection problems, and wasn't able to get in from Oregon to be able to hear that. But I thought that was one of the more enjoyable days that I had as mayor, and enjoyed meeting Dr. Henry, and I finally got him to sign my copy of Micropolis in Transition.
Well, I think that the most humorous thing, people didn't think it was humorous at the time, but to me it was, and that is I was mayor when the clock turned to 2000. So we had this whole perceived Y2K problem of, you know, the electricity is going to shut down, the water's going to shut down, everything went at the stroke of midnight. There was this fear out there that was really irrational. And we actually produced a movie, a film where we would show it to different groups, and we'd trot out the Public Works Director and Xcel Energy Director and whoever, and tell people about how we got the situation under control. Nothing's going to happen, you know, and this is why. And we put all this effort into assuaging people's fears of what was going to happen that day. I had planned on going on vacation to the Caribbean. I wanted to be down my little island where I have a home, and the sun rises first in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. That's where I wanted to be when January 1 rolled on, is when the sun rose first in the East in the United States. And I couldn't be there. People were going and saying, "Are you crazy? If you leave and this turns out we misjudged this and there's this huge calamity and you're off vacationing in the Caribbean, you're going to be toast." So I spent St. Cloud January 1, 2000 at home. Nothing happened. It was a very boring evening.
Well, the thing I enjoyed most as mayor really was the people. You know, I had an opportunity to meet a lot of people in this community. As mayor, you welcome people, whether they be from international. We have St. Cloud State University, which has a huge international presence, plus a lot of companies, so people come to town. Meeting, listening to people's stories, that really is something. And really, the leadership and the staff throughout the entire city. This became kind of a family. And that, I think, is what I enjoyed most, that interaction, whether it was meeting people. I do a lot of walking. You know, I walk almost 10 miles a day, and during that opportunity, I get a chance to meet a lot of people. So really, it's that piece of it, people, relationships, and the connections that I think I enjoyed most. Well, you know, I think we had three, really. The Great Recession of 2008, which was significant. All of a sudden, you had a huge downturn in housing prices. We got at the end of the year, we had about a $1.6 million cut in local government aid from the state. It was just a real tough time for not only homeowners and everybody else, but also for the city. It was a huge financial. We were on a before that. We were looking at valuations and everything. We're in an uptick, and then all of a sudden the housing market crashed, and it was really financially a tough time. We had to restructure everything in government, redid how we did our budget, got through it, but that was the first one. And then there were really two other ones. One, the attack at the mall in 2016. I remember getting the call from the chief. We had somebody that attacked and a number of folks, in fact 10 individuals with a knife. Fortunately, there was an off-duty police officer that eliminated the threat, Jason Faulkner. I remember that night having witnessed things prior to that, wherever that type of situation took place. There were riots the next day because we had a significant amount of relationship building and connection before that. We didn't see that in St. Cloud. We immediately had a press conference. I remember going to the mall, walking over the body of the individual, the person that did the stabbing. And of course, even more significant than that, Al-Qaeda took credit for it. So you put it on an international stage. The next day we had media trucks from CNN, from Fox, all over. But we didn't have what happened in a lot of communities because we built relationships, we had conversations. We did a press conference that night, right around midnight. We did another one at 8 o'clock in the morning, really calming, a lot of conversations all night long. I think I called probably 20 people between 12 p.m. and 8 a.m., making sure that we connected with folks, and we had a calming effect. What didn't happen was probably what we worried the most about. And then, of course, was 2020, COVID. I started that year actually with something I thought was going to be the biggest story of the year, a fire at the press. The press bar burned down. We found out later that it was arson. I remember getting the call from the fire chief, and this was going to be probably the biggest thing of the year. 2 months later, not less than 2 months later, COVID hit. That was a significant. And then the result of COVID, the civil unrest in Minneapolis, and we had it even locally. We had a social media post in the middle of summer that said, that a police officer had executed two teenage black males, and it was untrue. But all of a sudden, we had folks marching towards the police station. We immediately, again, got those conversations with folks, had a press conference right away in the morning, and really diffused what could have been a significant. We'd already seen what was happening in Minneapolis, but because, again, of the relationship building, we got together the folks from the community policing agreement, the chair, the chair of the NAACP. We got together a number of those signatories for that policing city agreement, and we went out for the next 2 nights and chatted and talked with people. We didn't see what happened in Minneapolis and cities all over the country. But I'd say those are probably the things, from the Great Recession to the mall attack to COVID to the civil unrest. Those were really big challenges, so it's hard to identify one. But over a span of 20 years, there were a number of things that took place. Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, I tend to enjoy the humor. I have a little dry sense of humor myself, but there's a gentleman that Granite City Radio, KVSC, does this thing at the Pioneer Place where they do kind of old-time radio and they have trivia. And a guy by the name of Jay Terry is kind of the host. He did an impression of me several times over the years. He does this really condescending, almost like a British accent. He starts off, I think, with like, hello, citizens. But really, that humor, and one night I was at one of those events, and Collective Unconscious, a regional band here, I went to one of the concerts, and they created this song called Kleis Kleis Baby, which is, a spin-off of, Ice Ice Baby. And so, and then he changed all the words, got 4 or 5 paragraphs, just hilarious. That was one of the funniest things that I experienced, just his humor. He's great about it, but that was, of all the things, I didn't expect that. And it actually played on KVSC quite a bit. Every now and then I would be driving in the car and I'd hear this Kleis Kleis Baby song. So in fact, I know that song now as that rather than what its original title was.